Hola annyeonghaseyo. Welcome to your next lesson. It's moving on now from festivals and celebrations to one of the other topics that we haven't done. It's all about local and regional features of Spain and Spanish-speaking countries. Now, it's a lot to take in. There's not a lot that you can be assessed on with this. There's going to be a little element of just general knowledge, first of all. I recommend that you make notes in English, because it's good to know things about the country. You know, if you're going to start learning the language, it gives you a bit of an idea of what Spanish people are going through right now. I'm going to begin with identifying errors in writing. Now, when you come back to school, there's going to be obviously tasks and evidence that you need to produce for getting your grades. Alright, so I don't want you to make silly errors. So we're going to look at a bit of text written about holidays. I want to see if you can identify the errors. We'll then get on to describir y conocer España, discovering and getting to know Spain, and then a few exam-style activities on the topic of Spain and Spanish-speaking countries. Okay, great. So to begin then, you have a textbook here, as I mentioned, written about holidays. At first glance, it looks perfectly reasonable. It looks great. Okay, it's roughly 100 words, which is the requirement for the very last question on foundation writing, or the second on higher tier. And all of you, I would say, would be higher tier writing. You need to have a read, right? Because not all is what it seems. It's full of errors. Looks good at first glance. You could be what's the word? You could be tricked into thinking, oh yes, it's fine, top marks. No, it's full of errors that are easily made when writing, particularly when under pressure. So, you don't need to write all this down. You can if you really want to, but you don't have to. I need you to identify the errors, list them, and correct them. Now at this point, I recommend that you pause the tape, pause the video. Because the next time you hear me speak, I'm going to be showing you where you can find the errors. Then it's not going to be the answers, but it's going to be where you can find them. Alright, now that's important. Here we go. So this is where the errors are. I've bolded them or I've underlined them. If there's an underline, it means that something's missing. If it's bold, it means that it's either the wrong spelling, the letter shouldn't be there, or the grammar is wrong, anything like that. This might set you on the right path into getting a full, correct translation. Do what you can. Correct these as best you can. And if you want to compare your corrections with the actual, real, correct answer, you will find that on the PowerPoint file which is in Moodle, just underneath this video. Now the important thing when you compare yours and the correct answer is that you understand why these are errors. Now if you compare the two and there's one or two there that you don't understand why it's an error, feel free to either ask in the team, or if you don't want to do that, email me, right, and I'll let you know. Alright, so moving on to local and regional features and characteristics of Spain and Spanish-speaking countries. Now, what a mouthful that is. Does it need to be like that? Who knows? But it is what it is. So, a quick task then. I just interested in what you know. When I mark your books, I'd like to see what you know about Spain and what you know about Spanish-speaking countries. As many facts as you can. Could be anything. If you've only got one or two, fine. But anything you know about Spain, anything you know about any Spanish-speaking countries, just to get us thinking, get the brain warmed up. Now hopefully you know that Spain is more than just Ibiza, right? To fully grasp this topic, we need to develop a deeper understanding of what Spain's like as a country. As we go through the next 5 minutes or so, make notes on what I tell you in the front of your books in English. It would be far too difficult to do this in Spanish. We need the general knowledge first. This is university style. Imagine you are in the theatre hall, the lecture hall. I'm at the front delivering some info. You need to write down the important info. Right, now what you see here is a map of Spain. The white bit right here. The islands on the south side are the classic holiday destinations. When you think of Spain, you think Ibiza, Tenerife, Mallorca, all of those areas. Fine. The bit slap bang in the middle is the region of Madrid. Slap bang in the middle is important because Spain's one of the only countries that I can think of, in Europe at least, to have its capital city in the middle of the country. To me, the capital city in the middle of the country makes sense. Just does. Now, getting my geography on for a minute, tourism is a huge contributor to Spain's GDP, gross domestic product. In other words, it's the money the country makes. The bulk of this tourism is obviously going to come from the south coast, beaches, isn't it? And sea, the islands, and then the two major cities, Madrid and Barcelona. And here we have just some arrows pointing out where things are. Right, now we have a more detailed map. Now this colourful map gives you the names of the 17 regions of Spain. Some are really famous and you probably have heard of. For example, Catalonia, Andalusia, Valencia. Others you may not have heard so much of. Now over here we don't tend to hear much about Cantabria or La Rioja or Extremadura, but they're still important. Now these 17 regions are more accurately known as autonomous regions. So what does this mean? I didn't hear about this idea of autonomous regions until I studied Spanish at uni, right? So it's new, it was new for me. To be autonomous means to have a certain degree of independence. Now with that in mind, these 17 regions effectively go from being, areas of Spain to states of Spain, in much the same way that you have 50 states of America. What does that mean? Well, just like the 50 states of America have local governments that can set laws and so on, so do these. Some of these regions have their own laws and traditions specific to that region. In some cases, they have their own language. Now it asks you, do you know of any? When you think of any other languages that are spoken in Spain other than Spanish, possibly you're thinking of Catalan. When you go to the football stadium in Barcelona, there is the words "Més que un club" painted into the seats. This is Catalan. It's very similar to Spanish. This language is a source of pride. Right? These regional languages are a source of pride. Despite all of that, though, excuse me, these regions are still ultimately controlled by the Spanish government. Some people do not like this. Now then, you can see here, this bit of red right here, this is the Basque country. Now this is known as País Vasco in Spanish. Now in País Vasco there was a terrorist group called Euskadi Ta Askatasuna, ETA for short. Now Euskadi Ta Askatasuna is a Basque name. The Basque country has its own language. Now the Basque people are notorious for being very proud of their area, so much so that the local football team, which plays in La Liga, the main league in Spain, had a policy for years and years and years that you could only play for Athletic Bilbao if you were from the Basque country. That probably limited their success, to be quite honest with you. It doesn't happen anymore, but this gives you an idea as to how much pride there is in being from País Vasco. Now the name ETA, Euskadi Ta Askatasuna, means Basque homeland and liberty. This is a group of people behind this terrorist organisation who have carried out so many attacks over the years. They've killed thousands of people. What is their main goal? They want to be completely independent from the rest of Spain. They don't want to be governed by Madrid. They want to make their own laws. They want to be responsible for themselves. Now, you would effectively be having then a country within the borders of another country. But this isn't unusual. This does happen elsewhere in Europe. Famously, in Italy, you have two countries within the borders of Italy. You have Vatican City, which is in Rome. It's a country. It's where the Pope lives. It's considered a country. You also have the country of San Marino, which is completely landlocked by the rest of Italy. The difference is they haven't gained independent status through violence. This is what ETA were looking to do for the Basque country, and they were prepared to do it by any means possible. Thankfully, the group was got rid of, disbanded about 3 years ago. But the damage has been done, hasn't it? Just to give you an idea of what these people are like, here's some ETA members. Look at the body language, look at what they look like. The masks, white masks, synonymous probably with the Ku Klux Klan, racist group from America. Look at the raised hands, the raised fists. This is a synonymous or representative of stuff that Hitler used to do. Okay, so you can see where the values are. An important part of Spanish history. Now we move on to las lenguas de España. The whole country will have Spanish, Español, sometimes referred to as Castellano, as its official language. Everywhere you go, signs in Spanish. We've mentioned that Galicia, Catalonia, Andalusia, Valencia, these are probably the most commonly used regional languages today. The others all still have them, but it's likely that not many people speak them anymore, and if they do, they're probably in their late 80s to early 90s, right? So really the older generation. A few years ago, we had a group of pupils over from Vigo in the region of Galicia. You might have been in one of the lower years actually at this point. And in Vigo, they had their lessons both in Spanish and Galician. Right? So equal status, more or less. Now, a task for you. I could go into the entire history of Spain, but you don't need to know it. You need to know some of this stuff just for a bit of appreciation of Spain. But I want you to tuitearme at this point. Now that sounds what it looks like. Tuitearme. In no more than 280 characters in English, tweet me what you've learnt about Spain so far. Now remember, a character is anything you can type, or in your case, write. So for example, a full stop is a character, a space, a comma. These are all characters. I'll show you an example. You could say, at Mr. C. Spain is a country with 17 regions, all with different cultures and languages. Nice. That is 79 characters. Now look, it's important that you understand that at Mr. C is not my Twitter handle. If you decide to tweet literally at Mr. C, it's going to be some guy, some innocent guy. Please don't. When you've got that, translate that tweet into Spanish. Remember, translation is 3% of your overall grade. So to do this effectively, keep it simple. When you translate in, remember the forgettables, the things that lose you marks. Gender agreement, A if it's feminine, S if it's plural, that sort of thing. This is not going to be a really long or difficult task. 280 characters. It'll probably be roughly 3 times the size of this example, if my maths is correct. Okay, now moving on. We're going to be looking at the WJC textbook, sort of. You're not going to. I've taken a lot of the tasks out of that on this topic of Spain and Spanish-speaking countries. We call this the Bible because it's full of tasks that the exam could throw at you if you're going to be having the exam. Now, it's not going to ask you about facts or details of everything you've learned so far. If this topic comes up, it'll most likely be in speaking, roleplay, photo card if you're going to be doing it, or the conversation, in which case they'll be asking you to state your preferences, compare Spain and the UK, etc. Now we're about to complete a variety of exercises from this textbook on the sub-theme. Now you may or should notice some crossover with the holidays topic. The very first task will be from page 96 of the book, which is reading about Argentina. Why there? Why would the Welsh Joint Education Committee pick a reading task about Argentina in Spanish? General knowledge. Have a think. So, on the next slide you'll see the task. What's the exercise telling you to do? What are the 3 bullet points saying? Then complete. So, you read the text about weather in Argentina and just write the information en español. That's important. Do not write your answers here in English. Because if this was forming part of the evidence that I need to produce a grade for you, and you've written your answers in English. No. So, en Argentina el invierno se extiende desde el mes de julio hasta el mes de octubre, en tanto que el verano va de diciembre a marzo. El invierno es bastante frío, llueve mucho y los días son más cortos. El verano es muy caluroso y la humedad es bastante elevada. Los días son más largos. Los meses más propicios para visitar Argentina son primavera y otoño, y aquí el clima es mucho más estable y cálido. So I've read that for you to get a little bit of Spanish to your ears. So remember, en español, 3 detalles about el invierno. When is this? Does it really matter, actually? Because you've just taken the information from here. 3 detalles about el verano. And then finally, mejores temporadas. You should recognize mejor as best. A temporada is a season. So just some details in Spanish about winter, summer, and the best seasons. If you want your answers, you will again find those on the PowerPoint on Moodle. Lovely. Page 98 then, we have 4 of the most famous tourist attractions in Spain. We've got El Palacio Real, we've got the El Museo Guggenheim, we've got Las Ramblas, and we have La Alhambra. I will not read these out, okay? Just for the purposes of the length of the video. But all we want here is which attraction was built in 14th century, etc., etc. Each answer you can just put as Palacio Real, Museo Guggenheim, Las Ramblas, or Alhambra. Reading comprehension, classic of the exam. The answers are not in the PowerPoint for this one. Now we have a translation task going from Spanish to English. Now then, when you're doing this, this is where actually a lot of you lost marks in your mock. So, take your time with this one, read it to yourself. If it sounds vaguely like an English word, for example, destino, then consider the context of the piece of the text. Would that translation make sense? If so, you've probably got the right answer. I'll give you a few words to help. We've got descubrir, to discover, and maneras, as ways or methods. There would be about 12 marks available for this, and I will say that el racism there is missing an O on the end. My apologies. So, you translate this as best you can into English. The answer for this is on the PowerPoint. Page 99 was a writing task. So think, what does it want you to write about? Escribe un artículo sobre un lugar, a place, que te gustaría visitar. Puedes dar más información, pero tienes que incluir. Now, what does tienes que mean? Remind me. So, tienes que incluir a dónde te gustaría ir y los motivos, los monumentos que visitarías, think about the tense, las actividades que harías, all those things. And finally, you have something slightly different. There's a gap fill exercise on Moodle called the New Camp Stadium Tour Gap Filler. Click here. You read the information about the New Camp Tour. It's in Spanish. You then fill in the boxes from the word list at the bottom. There are 8 sentences with a word missing. This will be slightly more difficult because the sentences are in Spanish as well. So which word would fill the gap best? This will really test your understanding of reading in Spanish and filling in the correct words. That task is self-marking and it should give you a mark at the end of it. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this video. That's quite hopefully enough to keep you going for about 2 hours. As ever, I am still online while you are working. If you have any questions, if you'd like me to clear anything up or mark anything, then please let me know. Otherwise, muchas gracias y adios.